Yumi Stein, who some of our viewers may be familiar with, her graphic, and I mean really graphic, and we won't go into this because it's Sunday morning and maybe we just shouldn't do that sort of thing. She's got a book called Welcome to Sex, and it's for kids as young as 8, not 18, 8, and it talks about all sorts of things, porn, sexting, and a lot of things that are fairly out there in terms of sexual practices. This has been shortlisted now for the Prime Minister's Literary Awards. Oh, there are no words, Claire.
There are no words, no. Again, I've had colleagues say this is very good for children.
How?
Well, I mean, the children really need this good sex education. And I do agree it's harder for parents. I think in our generation, when we asked parents to explain anything, they had the option of saying, tell you when you're older. And these days, kids Google it. And so there is a need for good anatomical, correct information out there, which we've always had in books. As you said, this goes into some pretty extreme sex practices that I think for adults on the desk on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, we can't show them here.
For adults,
yes.
And there is graphics and descriptions in this book, which apparently a mature 8-year-old can enjoy, and is, I think, targeted for 10 to 15-year-olds. We can't show it on an adult program, and yet a mature 8-year-old and the Prime Minister's endorsing it by shortlisting it for an award? But what sort of a country are we living in?
Claire, does this, I mean, I know we see the surveys about, when young people start to have sexual relations and things like this, but it would seem to me that this sort of thing would be encouraging kids to think about things that, are pretty smutty, and smut's fine if you're an adult, but not when you're 8, that they're encouraging kids to think, maybe experiment, do things much younger than they should.
Well, we've thrown out completely the idea of information delivered to children at different stages. The same with the gender issue.
And by their parents.
And by their parents, exactly. And this whole idea that we've talked about a lot, James, about the shortening of childhood. That there is no childhood anymore.
But how is it that we have this sort of weird thing where it seems like we have a shortened childhood but then an extended adolescence that lasts forever?
Yeah, that's true. But developmentally, there is no way a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, older should be having some of these concepts in this book. Some of them, yes, okay? Some of them are very basic kind of where do babies come from discussions, but there is information in that book that I would not want my teenager reading about. As you said, they wouldn't even be aware of it or on their radar anyway. And yeah, for the Prime Minister now to endorse it, I mean, I just think that speaks volumes on, as you said, where the country's at.
Well, this is another thing I can't work out. How is this listed for a literary award? I mean, I've read part of it. The spelling is correct. There's pretty much correct grammar, but it's not Gone with the Wind.
There we go, yeah.
So how on earth does this book get up as one of the great books in Australian literature this year? It makes no sense.
It doesn't.
Unless there's an agenda being pushed.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know what exactly the criteria. I would have thought a literary work should have some type of,
I think it's
artistic
the only book
merit to
shortlisted
it.
that has a section on scissoring, so there's that in here. Are we allowed to talk about that on Sunday morning?
We're talking about arts and crafts, right? We're talking about arts and crafts, everybody.
Everyone's now Googling what scissoring is.
But this is, again, we keep saying it, but the author herself said, a mature 8-year-old could look at this book. 8-year-old.
I don't understand what 8-year-old she's hanging out with. I mean, an 8-year-old would be very intrigued and shocked and probably quite traumatised if they're reading some of this information of what people apparently like to do to each other, because that's how graphic it goes into it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's just absolutely shocking. Prime Minister, if you're watching, I'm sure you're watching on a Sunday morning, maybe have a word to the people doing the literary awards thing and say, Let's strike this one off. I mean, surely there's some Little House on the Prairie or something like that the kids could be reading. Anyway, thank you so much, child and adolescent psychologist Clare Rowe. I appreciate it. And the arts and crafts description from Rita.